Hello everyone. I'm Jivita from Karpagavanaga College of Engineering and Technology, pursuing my final year biotechnology degree. And I'm here to express some mere idea that is relevant to nanobiotechnology, that is fabrication of cotton cloth using 5-fluorouracil encapsulated silver nanoparticles for effective skin cancer treatment. Let's move on to the topic. As we all know, in nanotech, we tailor materials at size within 1 to 100 nanometer. And we must be familiar about the term called as topical chemotherapy. The term topical chemotherapy means once an anti-cancer medicine is applied directly on the skin, usually in the form of ointments or creams rather than other modes. And 5-fluorouracil is the most commonly used drug for the topical treatment of basal and squamous cell skin cancer in some precancerous conditions. In this study, we plan to enhance the anticancerous effectiveness of 5-fluorouracil by encapsulating it in silver nanoparticles. Objective of this study is to generate very stable AGNP by using 5-fluorouracil as a reducing agent. And as we all know, the next step will be obviously characterization of the synthesized nanoparticle by methods such as FTIR, XRD, etc. As this is based on anti-cancerous efficiency, some anti-cancerous study such as MTT cell viability assay will be checked, and once it proves to be effective or good, it will be fabricated in the cotton cloths by two different methods such as dipping and sonication. Now we move on to application and advantages. If this showed good efficiency, instead of using 5-fluorouracil as topical application, the fabrics made out of such clothes can be used. And hence, it can be applied in the textile industry, medical devices, and pharmaceutics. Some studies reveal that antimicrobial activity of silver treated cotton fabrics maintained its efficiency over approximately 99% even after being exposed to 20 consecutive home laundering. And many studies reveal that 5-fluorouracil can be used for treating many other dermatological conditions as given in the PPT. Similarly, we are working on some researches in the same field, like using the green synthesis nanoparticle fabricated cloths for leprosy treatment. Not only the green synthesis nanoparticle, also the chemically synthesis nanoparticle by using the drugs, anti-leprotic drugs as cap reducing agent or capping agent for the anti-leprosy treatments. And these are the references I use for this study and for this idea. And thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity to express my idea. Thank you.
A warm welcome to all. Myself Johnny Raman. This is Vishnu Shagar. We are from Kamaraj College of Engineering and Technology, Department of Biotechnology. We are here to present our review poster work, BLNP's imaging based approach for subclinical diagnosis of metastasis in neoplastic cells. Let me see more about on further slides. Abstract. This is the abstract which contains all about our work. Metastasis is one of the unique property that was exhibited by malignant cancer. Since the rapid transition of neoplastic cells from one point to another occurs, there is a possibility of a tumor formation in various parts of a body where the neoplastic cells can settle. Since there is no appropriate subclinical diagnosis of metastasis is not available to detect the tumor formation. The optical energy triggered phytochemical processes are useful for cancer therapies to track the cancer cells. Under near infrared light excitation, the bioluminescent nanoparticles emit higher energy light which can be detected using in vivo imaging system. Therefore, these BLNPs can be used in the diagnosis of metastasis. BLNP can be isolated from marine organisms like phytoplanktons, jellyfish. Recent studies show that cancer cell line can be treated with lentiviral transduction to generate a luciferase expressing cell line. Further, in vivo imaging system can be used to track the metastasis of neoplastic cells. Similarly, in this review, we summarize the latest progress regarding the application of BLNPs in the diagnosis of metastasis-based cancer treatment approach. Bioluminescence. What is bioluminescence? Bioluminescence is the production and emission of a light by a living organism. It is a form of a chemiluminescence. Bioluminescence occurs widely in marine vertebrates and invertebrates as well as in some microorganisms including some bioluminescent bacteria, fungi and terrestrial invertebrates such as fireflies. In some animals, the light is a bacteriogenic produced by a symbiotic organism such as Vibrio bacteria. The general principle behind this bioluminescence involves a chemical reaction between some light emitting molecules and enzymes, generally called the luciferin and the luciferase respectively, because these generic names luciferins and luciferases are often distinguished by including the species or group. Firefly luciferin. In all cases, the enzyme catalyzes the oxidation of the luciferin. When the enzyme luciferin reacts to the oxygen, it converted into luciferase. During this conversion, it emits some luminescence. That luminescence is known as a bioluminescence. In some cases, the bioluminescent activity is guided by nanoparticles such as magnesium, calcium nanoparticles, and even sometimes they are regulated by the ATP adenosine triphosphate molecules. The metal ion present would certain some magnetic property which would be used to detect or track it efficiently. The metal ions on it guides the nanoparticle tagged with the bioluminescent luciferase compound. Next, how we relate these two things? It will be explained by Mr. Vishnu Sagar.
Metastasis. What is metastasis and what are all its impact on human life? First, let we know about a cancer cell. The cell which loses its control over the gene which is responsible for the cell division is called a cancer cell. The most probable reason for the transformation of normal cell into a cancer cell is mutation. The mutation can be a physical mode or chemical mode. Such mutated cells does not undergo apoptosis. Therefore, accumulation of these cells results in tumor formation. Such tumors formed needs a new blood vessel for its survival, and this is done by the process called angiogenesis. Metastasis is nothing but a property that is possessed by a cancer cell. The rapid transition of cancer cell from one point to the another point within the host by invading the bloodstream is known to be metastasis. In cancer cells, the metastasis leads to the formation of secondary tumors. This is termed as malignant tumor. The metastasis is one of a severe problem in a healthcare industry or in a medical history, which ultimately leads to the death of an individual. Since there was no well-defined diagnosis method for the detection of metastasis, a numerous number of deaths had occurred in the medical history. This bioluminescent nanoparticle would provide a new platform for the detection of cancer cells that are involved in metastasis and tumor formation. The bioluminescent nanoparticle that was obtained by modification of firefly luciferase gene by metal ion nanoparticle can be used for the detection of the neoplastic cells or the tumor formed by the process of metastasis. The nanoparticle which has bioluminescent compound can be tagged with the specific site of the neoplastic cells. Therefore, after the neoplastic cell possesses bioluminescent property as well as some magnetic property that the metal ion possesses. Therefore, the neoplastic cells can be easily detected using in vivo imaging system. That is, the nanoparticle is to be tagged with the cancer cells so as to facilitate the detection of the metastasis. This can be done through lentiviral transduction, that is, the gene that is encoded for luciferase is introduced inside a virus which is cultivated in the laboratory so that the yeast virus can be injected into the host through injection into the bloodstream. These injected viruses flows through the bloodstream and goes and binds to the specific location of the neoplastic cells so that the gene encoding for the luciferase is injected into the cancer cells. So the gene encoded for the luciferase gene goes and binds to the genomic DNA of the cancer cells and replicates, which results in the formation of or transcription of the neoplastic cells. So the luciferase gene is transcripted, which exhibit a luminescence property which is known as bioluminescence. Therefore, when a cancer cell replicates, the amount of luminescence or intensity of luminescence will increase, which can be detected using the in vivo imaging system. Or even a single cell can be detected using quantum dotting. The bioluminescence property would be a very helpful method for imaging or detecting the metastasis. In vivo imaging system. The neoplastic cells that were tagged with the bioluminescent nanoparticle can be imaged using in vivo imaging system. This can be done in three ways. First, bioluminescence imaging, a technology that uses light emitted by the enzyme catalyzed reaction to report activity at the molecular level. That is, the transformation of luciferin into luciferase would a bioluminescent reaction which can be detected. Or the second method is UV visible NIR microscopy. A UV visible NIR range microscope covers a much large spectral range and can image many things that are not visible to the naked eyes. The optics of such microscopes are made of materials that are transparent and can focus UV visible and near infrared range energy, through which the cancer cells can be detected. Or MRI scanning or magnetic resonance imaging. This uses the magnetic ion to detect the cancer cells. That is a type of scan that uses strong magnetic fields and radio waves to produce detailed image of the inside body. Using this method, the movement of neoplastic cells can be tracked. So through this method, the cancer cells can be tracked. So therefore, these bioluminescent nanoparticles can provide a new platform for the easy detection of the cancer cells. This would be a new idea that can change the medical history so that it can be useful for detecting and treating the people, those who are affected by normal cancer or primary tumors. Thank you.
For the nanotechnology, why we have to make out all these things? The main motiveness is, when you come to the earth's surface, it is fully polluted with air, water, pollution, bacteria, viruses, everywhere there is so much harm, right? And so many diseases are available. So what is a thing we can work out in this? And before we go into this, let me cut out the introduction, since we have already learned all these things here. Let me brief it fastly. Nanotechnology is a field of applied science where you have the whole control on the atomic and molecular scale. In our research, what we have done is we have chosen the hydrothermal technique based on the chemical synthesis processes. It's a heterogeneous chemical reaction where you have a presence of solvent which will be maintained above room temperature, and also the pressure greater than about 1 atmosphere in a closed system. The precursor here, what is the advantage of using this hydrothermal method is your precursor can be very, very inexpensive. Mostly it will be hydroxides, chlorides, etc. And there are two various synthesis methodology. One is top-down process and another one is bottom-up. Coming to the bottom-up process, you have the small atoms which again they combine together to form clusters to give the nanoparticles. So this comes under your hydrothermal methodology, comes under this bottom-up synthesis technology. Now we have chosen the material because material is important for us. Why I have chosen titanium dioxide nanoparticle? Why we have to choose? The reason is because of its high surface area. Our application is antibacterial studies. So when there are more number of, the surface area is more and more, the particle can inhibit the bacterial organisms. So this is one of the important factor why we choose this titanium dioxide. And apart from that, the small crystalline size, it can easily penetrate, okay? And also the anatase phase, where it is a highly good photocatalytic reacting substance, and also high crystallinity structure, and also your porous structure, activation of light source. So these are some of the important properties why we go preference for this titanium dioxide nanoparticle. Our synthesis methodology comprises this. The precursor here we have used is titanium tetraisopropoxide along with that isopropanol and deionized water. So they have been mixed together in the magnetic stirrer for nearly about 2 hours, and then it was transferred to a Teflon autoline clay because we are going for a hydrothermal, the thermal which is maintained at a pressure. Therefore, it is in a closed system. We normally use it as an autoclave there. It's a Teflon line coating there, which is maintained at 200 degrees centigrade for nearly about 4 hours, and then it is undergone for centrifuging process, and then we are subjecting to oven. After that, you have to go to the furnace for annealing around at 350, because my aim is I need it in the anatase phase. We all know titanium dioxide nanoparticle exists in 3 phases: anatase, bruchite, as well as rutile. So we need to have the anatase phase, though I have annealed it at 350 degree centigrade. So from this part, we are able to synthesize the titanium dioxide nanoparticles. Now, based on this, from the XRT pattern, you can see here, there is a sharp peak around 101, which indicates it is highly crystalline and anatase phase in structure. And it matches with the JCPDS number 211272, and we are able to get a small amount of bruchite phase, because as you increase your temperature, the bruchite phase will be decreasing. So that is the reason we are able to get a mixture of this. And in the case of FTR spectra, the OTIO bond stretching around 633, it denotes a strong stretching vibration of titanium dioxide. And from the UV spectrum, we were able to see the maximum absorbance comes around 264 nanometers. So from all these things, we were able to understand it's coming under the titanium dioxide nanoparticle. So our thing is under biological application, which is antibacterial. So we have to go about bacteria. There are 2 different categories of bacteria. We have gram-positive and gram-negative. Your gram-positive bacteria, they have a thick peptidoglycan layer, which is here indicated in the brown color. You can see that. This is the one which is responsible for the staining process. And in the case of gram-negative, that peptidoglycan layer is not thick, it is very thin. And you have an extra membrane called outer membrane. This is absent in the case of gram-positive. In our particular research, we have chosen 5 different bacterial organisms. 3 comes under gram-negative and 2 comes under gram-positive. Escherichia coli, Klebsiella pneumonia, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa comes under 3 gram-negative, whereas Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus mutans, they come under gram-positive bacteria. Now, coming for the test, we have several tests based on this: agar-well diffusion, disc diffusion, micro dilution, macro, agar, everything is there. Now, based on this, we have used agar disc diffusion methodology. We have taken a Petri plate where the culture medium is, it is there nearly about 25 ml per plate. And then we have taken the disc here, and these discs are just placed over this where your test part should be there, and it is incubated for nearly about 24 to 48 hours. After this, we can see there will be a zone of inhibition, which means it is going to prevent the bacterial growth. So based on this, we have considered the pure titanium dioxide. You can see the E. coli, under E. coli, Pseudomonas, Klebsiella, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus mutans. Based on the graphical, the zone of inhibition is highest for Staphylococcus aureus, which is nearly about 14 in millimeters. Now, I want to enhance this antibacterial activity. So I just go for various things. Why we have to use chemicals, other things and all? Why can't we go for biosources? Because they are available everywhere in the world. They are also cheaper in cost. So we have just tried out with the ginger extract here. The same process of synthesis will be for titanium dioxide nanopowder. To this, we will be making use of ginger. You take fresh ginger, 10 grams of this, and just try to boil it with this in 100 ml deionized water. Just boil it for 60 degrees centigrade and then filter this with Whiteman filter paper. Just have this in a storage of 4 degrees centigrade. So here I have taken nearly about 4 ml of ginger extract. And then again I take some 2 ml of titanium dioxide nanopowder, and then again I mix it with a magnetic stirrer and then go for centrifuging process, etc., and again drying oven, etc. Then I come under the ginger modified titanium dioxide nanoparticle. It's a surface modification. So again I can see from the XRD pattern, I can see that 101 peak around this anatase phase which shows it. But in the FTR spectra, you can see there is a bond around 1642, which is a ginger extract alone. So I can see C double bond O from the gingerol, which makes me the presence of ginger, and the UV spectrum of ginger modified, it gives me around 320 nanometer, which the maximum observance has increased when compared with the pure titanium dioxide nanoparticles. So when it is modified, again you can see in the FTR spectra around 6644. So this gives me the presence of gingerol is there even after I modify it with the titanium dioxide nanoparticles. So this comes under for the FTR analysis. So when again we go for the antibacterial studies, we can see that the ginger has enhanced the presence of gingerol in the ginger. It has actually enhanced the activity further. So you can see from the zone of inhibition, the Staphylococcus aureus. Now the zone of inhibition, it has been increased to 17 millimeter. So the summary of this whole thing is we have synthesized a pure and ginger modified titanium dioxide nanoparticle. It's a kind of a thing with hydrothermal, we are using this. And then the powdered samples were characterized with XRD, UV and FTR analysis. The XRD spectra shows that the pure and ginger, they are highly crystalline in nature. The UV spectra also shows that it is 320 nanometer for the ginger modified. So from this, I conclude that the gingerol in the ginger extract, it has enhanced after modifying it with the titanium dioxide nanoparticle. It showed an excellent antibacterial nature. And these are my references. And thank you so much for this. I kindly acknowledge Shizuoka University, Japan, for making all my experimental things, and SRM University and Wales University for all the kind support, and not by the least by my mother and my father, and to all the organizers of this team.
Study was on two industrially important components. One is cyclohexanone and another is methyl diethanolamine solution. And the process I used was activated sludge process. This was carried out in FACT Cochin. And as we all know, cyclohexanone is produced by Annan plant, and this is used as a basic raw material for caprolactam production, while methyl diethanolamine is used in tear gas, and both of it is finding industrially a wide range of applications. But one of the major drawback of our society is we are not concerned with the treatment of such components before its exposure to the water bodies. So this project was on how to treat it effectively, how to treat both of it using the standardized BOD, COD measurements. And why is exposure of methyl diethanolamine into the water bodies so much toxic to the environment? And by eutrophication, it might even lead to like cancer or such devastating diseases to the human body or to the plant and animal lives. So the main objectives were to prepare these two industrially important components, cyclohexanone and methyl diethanolamine, at various concentration, and the samples were readily available in the manufacturing unit plants of FACT. Then we had to determine the dissolved oxygen levels in both of it. Primarily using Ringler's method, and in order for the detailed calculation, we depended on azide modification method, and then to get the bacterial culture that was also available at the wastewater treatment plant, and then determine the BOD, COD, and followed by BI calculation. So this is how we prepared a cyclohexanone solution in various concentrations. A reactor was set up. Since the reactors available there was of 50 liters and all, and higher than that, so we had to set up a bioreactor. As you see in the diagram, it is having a pH control, then the treated effluent in the flask, along with that in the cylinder. This cylinder is 5 liter. We have a provision for aeration, and also for temperature, for checking temperature. Similarly, everything was manually controlled. Then for the preparation of bacterial sludge, we had to make it to 100 μg per ml concentration, and pH was adjusted to 6.8. DO level was maintained to 5 μg per ml. Micronutrients like phosphate buffer, calcium, magnesium, all that was added, and COD was first determined on the first day and then followed by the successive 5 days. Iodometric method was a standard method just for the determining the presence of oxidizing agent. I mean, here the oxidizing agent is dissolved oxygen itself, and then azide modification method was used as a standard protocol in order to determine the actual level of DO present. This was a titration method, and color change was from pale blue to colorless, and the starch indicator was used as an indicator. BOD measurement, these are the main steps. Then this is the calculation for BOD, D1 minus D2 into 1000 by P when the sample is undiluted, and after dilution, D1 minus D2 minus B1 minus B2 into F into 1000 by P, where D1 is initial DO, D2 after incubation DO value, B1 is the control before incubation, B2 after incubation, P is the sample volume diluted to 1 liter with dilution water, F is the ratio of seed in diluted sample to seed in control. Determination of chemical oxygen demand we use the same procedure. I'm not explaining the procedure because of the lack of time. And this is a COD digestion apparatus. What we find here is a reflex tube, as we all know. This was the calculation for COD. In COD, one of the main reagent that we use, again, COD is a titration determination, same procedure only. Indicator used is ferroin, and the standard reagent used is FAS, ferrous ammonium sulfate. So determination of bacterial mass was done by the normal method of weighing it without the crucible, and then with the bacterial mass plus the crucible. Then this was the result we obtained for BOD analysis. You can see the BOD values here. And this was for cyclohexanone. This was for MDA, while this is for cyclohexanone. We noted the BOD levels before and after incubation. You can find the BOD level is considerably reduced after incubation with the effluent treated bacterial species. These are the COD analysis for cyclohexanone and MDA. Now, the relationship between BOD and COD was a linear line for both MDA as well as cyclohexanone solution. You can find the value, but see in the value of MDA, you find it very less value, 0.051 to 0.07, which means it is highly non-biodegradable. It is not at all suitable for biodegradability. The main reason is, as a standard protocol, the BOD by COD value should be greater than 0.6. As we can note in the case of cyclohexanone, where BI values are 0.74, 0.63, 0.71, 0.66. All these shows that it is suitable for biodegradation, while in MDA, the case is very different. The values are very low. So this clearly indicates that MDA requires another standard protocol for an effective biodegradation, so that this can be before exposure to the water bodies, all the toxic chemicals from it is taken away, so that it can be biodegraded using the same process like activated sludge process, or any other treatment with secondary wastewater treatments, or etc. So this clearly indicates why methyl diethanolamine solution should not be exposed to the water bodies without treatment. And when we compare cyclohexanone and MDEA, we can know that cyclohexanone is far away better for biodegradation than MDEA. So this is an ongoing project. It's not. It's in the stages of completion. Now we are working on the studies of solutions which is having both this MDEA and cyclohexanone, as well as since we are talking about nanotechnology, we can also include the nanotechnology in this treatment of such chemicals which we are using in the water bodies. So I think there is a future scope of nanotechnology being embedded in this kind of treatment protocols for safe and secure exposure to water bodies, so that we don't have water pollution or eutrophication of these kind of very dangerous chemicals which comes later into our body also. So these were the observations made, as I already said. So from the studies, we can get to know that 98 to 95% of COD and BOD reduction was there in the case of cyclohexanone, while only 3% in 5 days for MDA. These are the bibliography.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's very informative presentation. It must helpful for all students. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Actually, ma'am, that is the main reason I just want to, because my guide will always tell me, whatever we have done, we have to share it with others so that it will be used. We can do something to the environment. Actually, our work is based on cancer.
Yes, ma'am.
And this paper was published in Elsevier Impact Factor of 4.
Okay.
And we are trying out anti-cancer also. We are working out. It is showing a very excellent properties.
Okay.
And I actually, one of my relative is affected with cancer. That's the reason I have chosen this topic. Okay. And I want to do something to the society. That's the main reason I have chosen.
All the best for your hard work, ma'am.